fellow earthly inhabitants. Today I want to talk about something that's really important, which is how do we stop feeding the matrix? So first and foremost, when we talk about feeding the matrix, we have to understand that we are at an energetic, spiritual, emotional, psychological, physical, financial level. We are continuing to feed the matrix. We are continuing to feed old timelines, old patterns, old programs, old ways of being. As I'm sure a lot of you have recognized, what we're seeing right now taking place in the world is the largest transfer of power and wealth that we have ever seen. But it is of my deepest feeling that that is not going to be the ending that we secure. That is not going to be the timeline that we secure. Because that is not for the highest and best good of humanity. It is not for the highest and best good of all living beings and creatures. So we're simply not having it. And here's what we are having. We have to stop financing the matrix. This is more important than ever. And it's going to take some balls. It's going to take some self-dedication. For myself, it had to actually get as bad as it is right now for me to officially cut off financing the system in any way. So what does that mean, we're not financing the system? That means we're not shopping at big box stores. It means we're not supporting the big corporations anymore. That means we're not shopping at Amazon. It means we're supporting local small businesses and we're building up those industries. Okay, so what's happening right now is that the middle class is being absorbed, completely wiped out. The goal is a completely technocratic society, a slave society. We already have a pre-full-blown slave society. Most people that you know, and maybe even yourself, I'm sure you've heard, like as a kid growing up, you know, people are like, growing up, being an adult's not so much fun, it's not so great. Well, why is that? Because they're slaves. Because they work 9 to 5 for a corporate job that then steals their tax money and then does crazy things with it and can barely support their families, have no time. You know, they're happy when they get a crumb of a vacation time. So we've settled for a way of living and a way of being that is inhumane, that is not the highest and best good for anybody here. And we all know that. So why are we still feeding it? Because what I'm talking about right now is taking our power back. The scope at which this harvesting consciousness, this consciousness harvesting matrix is taking place is unreal, you guys. For most people to honestly understand the full scope of this, it would break their fucking brains and completely, they would just shatter into 1,000 pieces. So what we have to do is we have to take our power back, because it doesn't even matter at a certain point what levels to this you understand that this is taking place. If you understand that there's a fucking spiritual warfare going on or not, it doesn't really matter. What matters is that we've got to stop financing it with our emotions, with our money, with our time, with our energy. Like now, like fucking today. Because if we don't do it right now, your children and your children's children are going to be robot slaves. And I'm not being dramatic about this, and even in the slightest. So, okay. So stop shopping at the big box stores. Support local farmers. Support, and you know what? Even better, secure land, secure resources. I know that not everybody is able to do that right now, but we need the people who can do that doing it, so that there's going to be a refuge for communities for when these breakaway societies start to happen. Because there's many timelines right now that could be playing out within humanity. There's several dominant timelines. And one of the dominant timelines is that part of society, part of the collective, is not going to wake up. And they will basically enter into cyborg enslavement. And we'll probably have absolutely no idea that that's even happening. And then there's going to be a part of society that, right, if this is the timeline that plays out, that just becomes renegades, and they basically say, you know, we're not going to do it. We're going to fuck the system. We're going to go co-create our own system consciously. But that's going to require us to know how to have relationships. It's going to require us to step out of codependent and narcissistic ways of having relationships and relating to other people, which is why the work of people like Teal Swan and these super foundational teachers have been so incredibly important in setting up portions of humanity. Because at a fundamental level, people feel completely powerless. And it's really sad, because human beings, are very powerful. Our DNA, if rehabilitated, has the potential to literally evolve into a state where we don't even need physical bodies like this anymore. We'll have light bodies. But that's not going to happen, because a lot of our DNA has been completely destroyed, and we've got to rehabilitate that. But on top of that, people feel like the amount of trauma, fragmentation, splitting, and programming that has taken place, you guys, and it's not just, I'm not just talking about the kind of trauma that like your family did unconsciously, that like, because they themselves are part of the same programming, like fucking monster that's just splitting people. I'm talking about something that's been happening for thousands and thousands of years. So I'm not going to go fully down that rabbit hole right now, but we have to understand that we've been indoctrinated into a matrix-like system, into a slavery system for so long, for so many generations, that we literally forgot. Like, we don't even see it as slavery because we're so far removed from it. And it's just kind of like people have almost given up a portion of their free will just to be like, well, I don't know, you know, it's too late for me to change now. It's too late for me to change my career at this point. I might as well keep working for JP Morgan. I might as well keep working for this corporation so that I can secure a check. Because it's made people so dependent on getting that crumb from the government or from this little corporation, massive corporation, and they've sold their soul for it. And we can't blame them, but we have to stop. Because we are perpetuating the very thing. So this is why I'm saying, like, if people realized how powerful they are, this would all be over in a snap, you guys. The people who are doing these kinds of things, okay? The people who are interested in harvesting fear, people who are interested in using you as a slave, they're not living the way that we're living. They're not living the way that you're living. They're living much longer. Okay, it doesn't take a whole lot of like mental capacity to look and see what's taking place. Look at the kind of food deserts that we have in poor neighborhoods, where there's maybe you can get a little Munchie Mart and you can get some shitty old high fructose corn syrup and some foods that are just gonna make it harder for you to think, make it harder for you to come up out of disempowerment and programs to actually create something different. So this is all very intentional. But what we need to realize is that we have it, none of it functions without us. It doesn't. So it's actually quite simple. We step out, we say no more, we say no, you don't get to have my tax money so that you can use it for corrupt means. We say no, you don't get to have my time and energy and precious resources to continue to feed something that's destroying everything. You don't get to have my spiritual consciousness wrapped up in your matrix. No, no, no. We're taking all of that back. And it's really going to be up to the individual to decide that for themselves and to step out. It cannot continue without you. You are the labor. There is much more of us than there are of them. So if we say no, it collapses. And then what we're left with is, okay, now we got to figure out how to cooperate with each other. Now we got to figure out what we do want. And we have so many brilliant minds within humanity. We have engineers, we have philosophers, we have teachers, we have everything we need to rebuild an entire civilization from the ground up, to rebuild an entire economy from the ground up, built on something that is organic, something that allows life to continue to regenerate and doesn't consume everything until there's absolutely nothing left. You know, for the people who are not ready to leave the matrix yet, the most important thing, this is the most important thing for anyone, regardless of where you're at or where anybody that you know is at. It's going to be what I've been talking about, which is going neutral, going sovereign, collecting all of your fragments, collecting all quota, and bringing them back to yourself and reclaiming your sovereignty, reclaiming your energy. Because anything else is just feeding division. It's feeding divisiveness. It's feeding into everything that keeps us down as a species. And without going too far into this, let me just say this much, okay? Our DNA is very valuable, actually. Why do you think some of the elites have to eat us? Why do you think they have to drain our children of blood and do black magic rituals? Because they can't survive on their own. You get that, right? Like, once you disconnect from source and you don't have anything directly feeding you from source because you decide that you want to create outside of the organic, regenerative, eternal life timeline, right? Because free will, source allows for all experiences. But once you decide that you want to do that and you step out of eternal creation code, you become consumption. You can't survive without consuming some living light force, some organic matter, because otherwise you'll just implode. So I was going somewhere with that. Our DNA. Yeah. You know, it's like so amazing to me because we're walking around like we're completely powerless because of how much torture and programs have been fucking just live in our DNA from thousands and thousands of years. But if people realize that, like, no, bro, they want your fucking DNA. They've been collecting your DNA because they need it, because it's fucking special and unique. So if we can rehab our DNA, we just say goodbye, done. We're done with that. Yeah, we're gonna go create new worlds over here. Like, good luck consuming yourselves, okay? We're just gonna lock up consumption and it's just gonna consume itself. So that should make you feel at least a little bit better. I mean, go neutral. What do I mean when I say go neutral? It doesn't mean bypass your emotions. Going neutral means, I mean, there's a million ways to do it, you guys. You can do it through completion process. You could do it through different visualization techniques. I have a new technique that's being installed right now for myself that's being brought to me, where you see the timeline that you don't want. That could be slavery society. That could be me continuing to work at this job. It could be me as an addict, whatever. You you look at that timeline for what it is. You collect your quota from that timeline. You collect all aspects that are hooked into that timeline. Who would be hooked into a timeline like that? Maybe a child that feels powerless. Maybe a child that feels like it has to give up itself in order to survive. Whatever that may be, you collect those parts of you. You bring them back. You neutralize, meaning we're not polarized. We come into a space of awareness of any and all polarity. We don't have hate for the matrix system even. We definitely don't have love for it. No, we collect our energy and we sit in this sovereign place, and then we act from that sovereign place. What is sovereignty? Sovereignty means we don't have an external authority. We don't need one. We're directly connected to the truth of ourselves. Why do we need an external authority? We don't. And from that place of really deep connection to self, really deep connection to truth and inner discernment, then we carry out, then we act in the world. And we move around this chessboard, emitting this frequency of integration, of wholeness, of sovereignty. Clear the traumas. Clear the programs that tell you that you are anything other than an eternal life force creator. Because anyone in this world that wants you to believe that you are anything short of an eternal creator with incredible DNA, with incredible power, a uniqueness that needs to be shared and expressed, anything that wants to tell you that that is not the case is not from God. And you're going to hear me using the word God more often because I've officially deprogrammed a lot of the religious crap that clouds all of that. Okay, because religion is also a program, and most of what you see in that has been completely inverted. I recently heard that, like, the Old Testament is literally a satanic text. Christ consciousness, Christic Sophia consciousness, is the opposite of that. So when I talk about God, and I'm going to talk about Christ consciousness, reclamation of self, it might trigger some people who have religious programs, but you got to realize that Source, God, all that is, eternal life, is not to be dragged into all of that negative religious programming, right? Because it wants you to, in a way, it's like, well, either you're going to buy the false religious program and get distorted and trapped in that, or you're going to completely denounce God and then just be like disconnected from God altogether. And we have to like wipe both of those and come back to ourselves. We are living gods. Okay. I think this was pretty much everything I wanted to say for today. You know, we're not victims to this, you guys. In a sense, yeah, we have been. We have thousands and thousands of years of having been victimized. I'm going to be honest with you. Yeah, that's true. But right now, we have to step way out of that. Because the more that we sit here and say, oh, this is happening to me, and these people want to control me, and they want what's, you know, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, but that can only happen if you let it happen. So we have to say no. And I know for some people that's going to be really scary because it's going to mean leaving their jobs that support the matrix and step out and create something different, but we don't really have another choice. Like, do you want to continue to be a slave? It's up to you. You can. Like I said, Source allows all experiences. You can be a slave. But just know you're not feeding the highest and best timeline for yourself and for humanity, and that I'm not going to choose to do that. So we have to think very carefully about the choices that we make in all areas of our life. Do everything we can to clear powerlessness and programs and trauma. rehabilitate our DNA, rehabilitate our sovereignty, and then help others to do the same and reclaim this land and reclaim everything. That's it. I love you guys so much. I plan to talk about more of this in a little bit of depth, but right now this is all that needs to be said. So I love you guys so much.